Hello fellow bike people! I'm filming at home again because the pandemic is still happening, so we're all trapped here. And I'm really thankful that cycling is one of the few things that's still kind of acceptable. Now, there are a lot of rules around it. You don't want to be doing anything dangerous on your bike right now, for one, because the health systems really can't handle it. In some areas, cycling's really limited just because that's necessary for pandemic controls. But for the most part, if it's cool in your area, it's still totally fine to go for a little bike ride just to get out of the house. The best thing to do to stay away from people, just ride around the back streets in the middle of the road as far from pedestrians and cars as possible. But you do what you gotta do, right? What I want to do today is give you some tips for setting up a little home toolkit that you can either take with you or leave at home for working on your bike. It can be anything from bare bones basics up to a full toolkit like I've got set up with me. It all depends on what you want to get out of it and how much work you're comfortable doing on your bike. I'm making this video right now because a lot of bike shops aren't as accessible as they used to be because, again, the pandemic. So if you are considering working on your own bike at home, this is a really good time. And you don't need a big budget to get a little toolkit set up. A lot of the tools I'm going to show you are bike specific from bigger brand names, but you can use basic generic Allen keys, screwdrivers, tools like that. You just got to find out what fittings your bike has on it and get the tools to match. You can also throw in a lot of other things in these kits, like first aid kits are great to have with you, for example, maybe some lights for in case you get caught outside at night, maybe even throwing a bike cover in there if your kit's a little bit bigger. So here's some hopefully useful tips, or at the very least some inspiration for setting up your tools. So we're going to start with the basics here. You don't need very much to make adjustments and do basic repairs to your bike. The first option is a simple multi-tool like this. I keep a patch kit under the rubber band just in case. For the most part, a tool like this is going to have everything. It's got a chain tool, it's got a tire lever, it's got all the Allen keys and Torx bits you could possibly need, and this one even comes with a saw blade for camping purposes, I guess. Tools like this start at around $15 for a basic one, up to about $50 or $60 for a high-end one at a bike shop. But you can also get options like this from basic brands like Canadian Tire or Walmart or stores like that. The other option for something small just to carry with you and make minor adjustments and repairs is a little bike bag like this. This came from the dollar store, and inside keep a rag for keeping clean after you're done the repairs, a very basic multi-tool with 4, 5, 6mm Allen keys, 3mm Allen key, and a screwdriver. This is a chain tool with built-in spoke tools at the bottom from Pedro's. I have a mini patch kit, small 8, 9, and 10mm wrenches, and a T25 and a T10 Torx key. The advantage to a kit like this, as opposed to a single multi-tool, is having all the tools separate means it's a little easier to find ways to get leverage and get them into tight places, so you have a bit more maneuverability with something like this. And for a kit like this, you don't need to use bike-specific tools other than a chain tool. For the most part, you can use just basic 8, 9, and 10mm wrenches and a basic Allen key set, and then throw a small screwdriver in there, one of the jewelry sized ones. So now we're going to move up into slightly bigger options. These are good for throwing in a backpack or keeping at home just as a neat way to store your tools as a basic home mechanic set. Just like the small kit I showed you before, both of these cases are from the dollar store nearby my house, and they're intended for CDs and headphones and music equipment, but they work perfectly for bike tools. This kit is a little bit more focused towards BMX bikes. So if we look inside, see we have some basic tools up here. We have an Allen key, a small 10mm wrench, some sandpaper, some zip ties, and a non-bike specific multi-tool that has a blade on it and some pliers. Down in the big compartment, the big difference between this kit and this kit is we can carry some larger tools to get a lot more leverage and carry some spare parts. So again, we have a rag for keeping clean. We have a large 6mm Allen key, and because BMX bikes take so much force on their landings, you need a lot of force to tighten down the stem and the handlebars, for example, so a tool like this is useful. We also have a second 10mm wrench, because a lot of BMX bikes, the brakes involve tightening two 10mm wrenches together like that. Something great for BMX bikes is BMX specific multi-tools. They're available from brands like Odyssey and Animal, and a lot of other brands make them too. This one is from Tall Order. It's a very simple setup with a 6mm Allen key here, an 8mm Allen key here, a 3/8 ratchet attachment here, and it comes with a 17mm socket. What I've done is tape the 17mm here and added a 15mm for non-BMX bikes, and for more basic BMX bikes, these are common on the front wheels. We're also carrying a basic chain tool here. This one is from Walmart. It's a very basic tool, and the reason I like this one is the teeth are spaced wide enough to fit a BMX chain. The last tool we're carrying is a pipe cutter for cutting down handlebars and seat posts and making adjustments like that. Not the most common tool, definitely not necessary for a kit like this, but I find they're kind of fun to have. Now we're going to get into the spare parts here. Obviously an inner tube. Spokes of a few different lengths. Here I have 182, 184, and 186mm. Those will fit most BMX wheels. There are a few other sizes, but usually these will work. We have a master link, also known as a quick link, just to replace broken chain links if that happens. Spare bar end, so you don't have a hard landing and get punched in the stomach by an open bar if your bar end happens to break off. A spare rim strip in case that happens to get damaged. And lastly, we have a spare brake cable. And this last kit here is focused to more general cycling, so urban bikes, road bikes, mountain bikes, things like that. It's not detailed enough to do extreme repairs, but it covers all the basics, and again, it carries a bunch of spare parts. So we unzip here, and here we have it. So just like the other kit, the first row here is some basic tools. First we have the tri-Allen tool with the 4, 5, and 6mm Allen keys. Another non-bike specific multi-tool with a pair of pliers and a basic blade. A Sharpie for taking notes or, you know, just in case. And this is one of those multi-tip screwdriver pens. This has smaller Torx bits, which are becoming more common on higher end bikes. We also have a patch kit. Instead of being the pre-glued type, this is the more traditional type, which I find is usually a bit more reliable, even though you have to wait for the glue to cure. And we have another bike-specific multi-tool, this time from Crank Brothers. These two pockets are where I carry some smaller parts and some smaller tools that might go missing in the other compartments here. These are brake blocks for disc brakes, so if you have a hydraulic brake and you take your wheel out, these are necessary to keep the pads separated so they don't get compressed together. In this handful we have a mini flashlight for if you've dropped something in your frame, for example, or you want to check for cracks inside a bike, a business card, some small zip ties, a ruler, and I've got a pick in there as well. Moving over to this side, we have spare chain links of a few varieties, spare bolts and nuts and just miscellaneous hardware, small pair of scissors, a jewelry screwdriver. We have a Phillips screwdriver for making, say, derailleur adjustments. This one's a small slot screwdriver, some variety of spoke tool, a curved pick, a pair of gloves, an old school bike tool. These were common in, let's say, 80s and earlier. These were a frequent tool that would come with bikes. This has a lot of different wrench varieties and the hook tool for like lock rings. So this is a useful tool, not very common these days, but when you can find them, they're very inexpensive, and the real beauty to them is they're flat, so they'll fit nicely in one of these toolkits. This, I don't really know why I have this in here. This is one of those credit card multi-tools. I guess it could be useful. It's got the little saw blade edge there and something for making like punctures here, but I can't really see real use for this. I'm just gonna get rid of that. One of those T25 and T10 Torx keys. And last, a 10mm socket, but one that fits into an Allen key instead of a ratchet. So while I'm cleaning this up, I might as well mention the pump that's sitting here. I keep this pump with this toolkit. The pump being this small, it only fits on Presta valves. So it's not the most useful pump in the world, but you can get pumps that size that do fit with the Schrader valves as well. And having a small pump is great for convenience, but they do take a lot of effort for pumping up the tires because there's less volume, so you get less air per pump. You can reach a higher pressure, but you're going to be there for a long time pumping. If you're just going to leave it at home, you might consider getting a normal size, like the bigger floor pumps, so you can pump like that and it's easier. If you're taking it with you, a small pump like this is great to have. So those are the portable toolkits that I have set up. I've kind of tuned them to the bikes that I frequently work on, so definitely make changes to yours. Don't do them exactly like mine if that's not going to work for you. And hopefully, if you're like me, setting up your tools will help keep you stoked for when we get back to being able to ride full time.
Pump it up.
Why does the middle finger on this hand squish when I press this knuckle?
Oh, well, I got two. I feel
it's
like my
really
fingers
weird.
are broken.